It's the morning drive. Oman's hospitality sector has delivered a record year, revenues topping $770 million. Strong growth in visitors, occupancy and rates. The backdrop, though, is, of course, rising regional tensions, the uncertainty, so questions over how resilient this momentum will be. So we're going to dig into a new report. Zacky Sajjad is back with us, Head of Business Development, Client Relations at Cavendish Maxwell. Your report again. Do you do anything apart from reports?
Good morning. Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, we have a team working very hard to work on these reports across the region. So
they're so impressive, these numbers, because we look at Dubai as kind of the regional hub of all this activity, and it's all going on here. But $772 million in revenue 2025, 22% year-on-year growth. Is that, Zacky, is that a recovery from previous years, or is it Oman in a new league?
It's it's in a new league for the last sort of 5-6 years for sure.
Yeah.
I think even if you look at it from historic sort of pre-pandemic, I know to go on about it, even though it was sort of 6 years ago, but interestingly enough, the airport travellers in Oman, we've still not seen the numbers that we saw in 2019.
Okay.
However, hotel performance is doing really well, and that's testament to the domestic hotel travel and the domestic travel industry. So Omanis themselves getting out there and traveling across the country, which is vast. I mean, just to get from Muscat to Salalah could take you 9+ hours to drive. So it is a rather large country. So yeah, that's where a lot of the kind of numbers are coming from, about a third, just over 30% as Omani travellers. So with that, I mean, look, that's probably more sustainable, if you like, for Oman in terms of that. And once they are now seeing an increase in European travellers, they make up about 25% just over now. So, it's strong performance. It is doing well, to answer your question, but it's sort of led by domestic travel.
Okay, so 36%, I think it is, of hotel stays are local Omani stays. So that's domestic resilience. So is that something that's helping keep the sector afloat? Because there's so much else going on, isn't there? There's so much competition.
Yeah, look, there is a lot of competition, and I think, but also if you look at it, so one of the real sort of main advantages for Oman is Salalah and the Kharif season, which is over the summer months. So, I mean, you've been here a long time. Perhaps you've been yourself, but those who haven't been, if you were to go to Salalah during the summer months, where the rest of the GCC is rather sticky, rather humid, rather hot, the weather is almost perfect, and so you see a huge uptick in hotel stays in and around Salalah for that sort of Kharif season, which is over the summer months.
Yeah, I think Salalah should run a campaign called Salalah is awesome. I've been a couple of times for Kharif season, and it's a fantastic place and really unspoiled.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is some exciting developments afoot, but what I like about the way Oman is sort of doing this is it's quite measured, it's quite calculated. Yes, we have these increasing ITCs, which is essentially the kind of international freehold areas that foreign nationals can now buy in within Oman. But I'd say that's in its infancy compared to some of the markets across the GCC, certainly Dubai, for example.
Yeah. How sustainable is demand in Oman, do you think? Because it's not like the rest of the GCC in lots of ways, is it? I mean, every country is obviously distinct and different. But Oman kind of prides itself on its neutrality, I suppose. It's a little bit different to the rest of the nations. But current tensions are going to have an impact on the perception of international travel, at least. Yeah,
I'm sure. Look, that's there's no denying that. I think the whole region is going to sort of have to weather this storm, if you like, for want of a better phrase. If I look at Oman, as I said, the backbone of it being just over a third as domestic travel, okay, that maybe the European travellers may impact, but there's still a lot of demand from the UAE and European residents in the UAE that like to travel to Oman. there's still a lot of GCC and other Arab countries that do travel across Oman. So, although we don't have the crystal ball to sort of predict exactly what will happen, I would say not a huge increase in hotel inventory in terms of what's under construction. About 900 rooms that would be added this year. So I think we'll see occupancies hopefully maintaining where they've been at, which is sort of the 56 to sort of 57% mark.
Okay.
And I think where we may see some pressure is on the room rates. So that may come down slightly to try and attract people. I think that's probably going to be a trend across the Gulf.
You would think
across
so.
the GCC. So, in order to keep those occupancy rates going, and much like we've seen in the hospitality sector around Dubai and the UAE, a lot of people have been adopting this kind of pandemic protocols. These sort of the way they're approaching this. So, I would suggest that the F&B offerings, some of the kind of staycation offerings, those type of things are really going to be pushed quite hard across the region, and Oman included. But to your point exactly, I mean, Omanis, they're sort of known for their hospitality, known for the friendliness. When you travel around Oman, a lot of Omanis speak English as a second language. It's quite easy to get about, very friendly, always welcoming. So I think those fundamentals will always remain. And if anything, from what I'm hearing on the ground, is that this neutrality that sort of Oman has taken during this sort of geopolitical tensions, that has actually attracted more GCC investors and GCC nationals to Oman. We know there's certain GCC states that have wonderful palaces and holiday homes and of that nature across the the Sultanate. So perhaps that might be an interesting trend. And obviously, when leaders and leadership tend to go somewhere, that then attracts more people.
It's just, Oman interests me in lots of ways. But I mean, I've been lots and lots of times and spent quite a lot of time there, working and holidaying, if you like. But the strategic position to me is quite an interesting one, because Dubai's often seen, Dubai's like the headline sort of hub destination. This is where everything happens. Oman markets are sort of a more sort of peaceful authenticity. And that's a terrible phrase, but that kind of encompasses it. So if you're bearing that in mind, given the volatility that we're seeing, is that kind of slower paced branding? Because that's the feel. You feel there's kind of
a laid backness.
There is.
Yeah, for sure.
It's different. Do you think how valuable is that as an asset for attracting travellers, particularly travellers with money to spend? Do you want to kind of get away from the noise?
I agree. I think if you one thing that we've talked about before and on other topics is the sort of metropolis that is Dubai and how busy that is. And we all know now it's almost become the city that never sleeps. You're on it 24/7. So therefore, if you're living and breathing that, then somewhere like somewhere quite close by that you can drive to, say Muscat, within 5 hours ish, from Dubai, is quite an attractive proposition to sort of wind down and switch off.
You're a very peaceful driver. If you're doing fine. I'm like 3 hours 15.
Yeah.
If I'm not.
It's it depends on that border crossing, doesn't it? Really. But no. For me, I agree. I think there is that sort of attraction, if you like, for certain travellers. I think also that perhaps could be sort of utilised, for want of a better word, in a better way, is some of the kind of the nature and the experiences that Oman could offer. I know for a fact that if you look at kite surfing, which is quite a popular activity here, Oman is actually one of the top destinations in the world for that sport. So a bit more sort of campaigns around that could probably attract some niche travellers as well, which therefore then could attract more. So you've got the sort of desert that meets the mountains, that meets the ocean vibe. I know that if anybody that's a fisherman that is into their sort of fishing activities, then Oman is a phenomenal place for that type of travel as well. So I know there's a number of options available to people that are into that sort of thing.
Well, there is legitimate surfing in Salalah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is a hard thing to find.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know a number of friends who are into surfing as an activity here in the UAE, and they're regular travellers. And interestingly enough, the peak season for that is over the summer months. So that's when they're going over there to sort of spend long weekends and whatnot for that type of travel. So I think really, if we go to also its geographical positioning, if you look at where Duqm is, where the port is, and obviously that bypasses the Strait of Hormuz, which is a topic that's being heavily discussed at the moment. So again, there's added advantages to that, which we may see an increase in the kind of business traveller, if you like, for these next few months, as various strategies and sort of approaches to dealing with the pressures that we're seeing as a result of the geopolitical tensions that might well benefit Oman.
I think you've got the job with the Oman Tourist Board. That's fantastic. But you're right. There's a great deal that you could see being added to sort of the portfolio, isn't there, to attract travellers. How do you, in the report, let's head back to the report for a moment, how are developers and operators balancing expansion, because we've got more hotel rooms coming on, of course, but with maintaining profitability, particularly given where we are?
Yeah, look, and historically it's been a challenge in Oman. We've had the office there for 8 years, and we deal with a number of owners. I think where perhaps in the past, people have decided that they're going to build a hotel without sort of really delving into what would be what the market would be willing to absorb, and what is possibly going to be the most sought after offering. People have just kind of gone into this thinking, I'll build a hotel. And also with some of these kind of ITC zones that are earmarked for foreign ownership, residential foreign ownership, there are requirements historically that have been put on the developers where they have to deliver a number of hotel keys, right, to try and grow this. So this has been a challenge, and it's working with firms like ourselves and working with the various stakeholders, be that the owners, be that the authorities, to sort of look at what positioning, where there may be the most demand, whether that's in whichever segment. Looking at, obviously talking a huge country, so if you're looking at somewhere like Duqm as an example, it would probably be the kind of more affordable business traveller that you'd look for that type of positioning. If you look at certain areas of Muscat, then it's the capital city. There's a more diverse mix. Salalah, as we know, is peak season is during the Kharif season, so there's probably a bit more appetite for that kind of resort offering. And you've got so much untouched, unsport landscape between Salalah and Muscat. I mean, one of my favourite places is probably close to Ras Al Had, where you've got some of those wonderful spots and those wonderful older inventory, if you like, which I love going to. But all these various things. So it's looking at balancing that, doing the right research, looking at where the demand drivers may be, and then obviously looking to develop something that's appropriate, that will be absorbed.
So an influx of VW camper vans, and boards on the roof.
You never know. It's adventure tourism. It is a growing thing.
Oman's airports, nearly 15 million passengers, according to the report. So air connectivity, clearly critical if you want to sustain growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously they did expand Muscat Airport a few years ago. We're still, interestingly enough, as I sort of said, I think they saw just over 19 million in 2019 in terms of airport sort of traffic, if you like, airport passengers going through. So we're not quite there in terms of the recovery of where they were at pre-pandemic. But if you look at it year on year since, it's been growing sustainably and healthily, ever since. So I think it is a key area, but again, given what's happening with the geopolitical tensions, there may be some opportunity there to attract various residents from across the GCC into Oman, as you say, by road, offering various sort of options, perhaps streamlining that border crossing a little bit better for
That would help.
For GCC residents,
Yeah, that would certainly help. Then, what's interesting as well, Salalah International Airport up 10%.
Yep. And I think that's testament to a couple of things. Obviously, there's been more inventory added. I think they've also, if I look at what seems to have been happening these last few years, take away what's been happening from the geopolitical side of things, I think a lot of people are busier than ever, and have been busier than ever across the region. And therefore, traveling to somewhere like Europe or Asia or, even the Americas has been quite a challenge. It's quite a long flight, and you have to take longer, inevitably, because it takes longer to get there. You want to stay longer. I think people are finding that sort of balance a little bit harder, a little bit trickier to navigate. So people are looking for options closer to home. And I think Oman and Salalah in particular has benefited, as has other sort of areas. But one of the benefits, so I think that's why we've seen this level of increase in Salalah, as well as, I think the GCC nationals who historically would have been going to other areas around the world for their summers, they've also been busier than ever. So I think they're also having to stay closer to home. So they're picking, this is an option.
There's a feeling, isn't there, that it is kind of a more, I don't know if peaceful is the right word, but it will do for this instance, I suppose, that it's a more kind of peaceful, laid back place to be. And because of that, it always strikes me that it's been a relatively stable kind of a destination, because you know what you're going to get, and you think, I just want to be there and chill for a few days in Salalah, for example. And I wonder if that's one of the inherent benefits of Oman.
Oh, absolutely. That when
all's said and done, it's like, it's there. We could. That's the place we should.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when you throw in good weather, on the ocean, on the coastline, with various options, be that from the adventure tourism that we've discussed, be that surfing, be that fishing, be that kite surfing. You look at the various options that are available now in terms of places to stay. You're even seeing sort of I would say more kind of serviced apartment type offerings. The Airbnb offerings that we're seeing here, they've also have some of that. Obviously, not in the same volume that you would see in Dubai and the UAE, but there are those options. So I think all of this, kind of is come together quite nicely to see quite good numbers for 2025, and hopefully that will remain for the remainder of 2026.
All right, so let's look ahead a little bit, 2026 into 2027, the risks, the opportunities for the hospitality sector in Oman. If you guys report in hand are talking to a hotel operator in Muscat, wherever, today, what are you telling them operationally that needs to happen so that they can keep up this 22%?
Look, I think, at the moment, there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on the operating costs, so the OPEX of assets. Given what's been happening the last sort of 7-8 weeks, a lot of scrutiny should be put on that. Where can those costs be sort of constrained somewhat, controlled a little bit, and then look at the opportunities. I'm always a firm believer in, let's look at the opportunity here, right? You've got a lot of people who are still around the region that are looking to travel. They may want to stay a bit close to home. There's an option there. Oman hasn't really had as much of an impact as some of the other GCC countries. So, playing to that to attract those visitors and those guests, making it quite easy for them to get there, making it quite easy for them whilst they're there, which we know that Oman is great at, offering that kind of warm hospitality that is synonymous with Oman. And then, looking to sort of, I would say, a lot of focus on some of the F&B offerings within some of these hotels, see what can be done to really take advantage, take lessons that have been learned from the UAE, from KSA, from Qatar, and take some of those lessons and do it in the Omani way. That's what we would sort of
it makes
say.
It makes a lot of sense. Final thing, is this a growth cycle just getting started? Do you think?
No, we've seen. I would say Oman has been in a recovery phase since the pandemic, and I think this is now. It's close to I mean, obviously, in terms of the numbers on value and volume, it's there, but that's supported a lot by the domestic travel. So that's just, so if we look at it from that perspective, and even at sort of 56, 57% occupancy, there is still further growth potential there. So
It's
now
real,
it
isn't it?
requires real joint up thinking from all the stakeholders, be that the ministries, be that the operators, the owners, and the consultants, advisors, to come together to strategize to make sure that they can just get to that final hurdle of getting to your 70, 80% occupancies.
There's more to come, I guess. Zacky Sajjad is the Head of Business Development, Client Relations at Cavendish Maxwell. New report on Oman out now, and that headline figure, once again, 22% year-on-year growth in Oman's hospitality sector, basically. Interesting to talk to you. Always good to have you here, Zacky.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. This is MIRA Business FM.